Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Audio Stew because I could come up with a different name for a different kind of podcast, so it's just special episode uh 01. I don't know. It's just it is what it is. Um, but no, for real, I've been wanting to explore other options for podcasting. I like the normal format for Audio Stew as far as just having different people on the show to talk about a different variety of topics and stuff. I love doing that. But I think it'd also be cool to have like a regular kind of show where you kind of can, I have one show for variety, but like I'm like the common factor as the host. But then to have another show that always has like the same topics and hopefully, probably, maybe, I don't know, the same hosts. It kind of depends. I would like Christina. Hi, Christina. Again.
Hi, hello.
She's a regular now. She knows what to do. I would like it to be where Christina and I host it. And yeah, but what would the actual topic be? Wow, another great question. I don't know why I just received a letter under the mail, but okay, thank you, person outside.
Kurt lives in a closet under the stairs.
I would take that over my room that I designed to block the vent, so it's 1,000,000 degrees and it stinks like crazy, which you probably didn't need to know that, but that's just the way it is when it's the summer and there's no circulation of the air.
Why?
I'm just gonna keep going. I might cut that part. Anywho, so this podcast, if it ever happens, if it does happen, it'll probably be. I'd love to do like a back and forth thing for next year. So like 1 week is Audio Stew, the next week is this podcast. And this podcast is about music, actually. Not specifically the I guess the sound, the auditory part of music. Although it is.
It's called Audio Stew.
No, that's what the other one is. This is different.
This is called Audio Stew.
Without the audio.
Soup for the human soul. I don't know.
No, it'll have a better name than that. But more specifically, lyrics in songs. Right now, I'm going to college to study English education, and so I'm always thinking about the ways we communicate to others, like with words and stuff. And sometimes lyrics and songs are kind of like secondary to the actual song, like they're just kind of there to fill in the gap, and it's more about like the beat and stuff like that. But I'd really love to examine lyrics from different music albums and look at how the album is like designed thematically a lot of times, and just like the different messages from within those lyrics, and how how the artist writes from their own experience yet also wants to connect with the audience, and just all those different nuances. And so we'll see if that happens or not. This is kind of the test run of it. So yeah, that is that. So the album that we are going to be talking about today is called The Ways and Means by Sarah Sparks. I don't think very many people know about her. She's an independent artist. I think she lives in Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. And another thing, I don't know, I'd love to like actually play some of like the songs from these different artists, but I don't have it quite figured out how copyright stuff works with a lot of that, so I'll probably hold off on that for now. But really do excuse me, if this is interesting to you, then go look up the songs themselves and the lyrics also. But anyway, so Sarah Sparks, independent artist. Her style is more like a, how would you describe it?
I think a description I've seen is like a modern folk. Definitely more in that indie range, somewhere between folk music and right on the edge of bluegrass sometimes.
I think her newest album, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's more in that unique style. There's a very specific style of music that I listen to personally that is not very mainstream. It doesn't have the typical pop lyrics where everything repeats every 20 seconds and it's all just about the physical music. I like a very limited number of instruments and more classical sort of and instrumental, and then in terms of lyrics, something that's maybe a little bit quirky or very personal, or it means something, like poetry. I like poetry.
I was gonna say that kind of sounds like I don't know, like Mindy Gledhill or whatever.
Yeah,
and
I
that
like
kind of
Mindy
stuff.
Gledhill, who's a little bit. It would be a similar style, and obviously people know who Mindy Gledhill is. In terms of, well, obviously, if you listen to Sarah Sparks, you'll figure out that she's a Christian artist, and I would say similar Christian artists with similar sound would be like Jenny and Tyler, who are a little bit more mainstream, possibly.
I like what you said about the limited instruments. I really enjoy, I guess, simpler music a lot of times. I don't know if that's a. It's not simpler in the sense of like the not necessarily like the level of difficulty in like playing it, but in just a more restrained, and we don't need 40 different instruments for this one song. So most of her songs, it's just her singing. There might be a couple where I don't know, like if her husband or somebody else is on the song with her. Not from this album, but yeah, she mostly just uses like an acoustic guitar. I think there's probably a banjo in some songs. I know there's a piano in a few songs. So other than that, it's really not a lot. But yeah, Christina and I both really love her stuff. She has 3 different albums. The first one came out in 2014. That's Into the Lantern Waste, which I would love to talk about. But quite frankly, I'm saving that in case we actually do make this podcast, because I love that one so much. It is all themed lyrically around the Chronicles of Narnia, which if you're a fan of that, is probably 100% the coolest thing you've ever heard. And then her next one, which we will talk about, is The Ways and the Means, and that one is, I don't know, that one might technically be like an EP. There's only 7 songs on the album. And then the newest one that just came out last fall is All I Have. And that one, I think, has a little bit of a different shift in style. It probably is a little bit more, I think you described it like Nashville or something.
Yeah, more in the bluegrass range. But I don't know. I think it's still accessible to people who aren't necessarily like Tennessee kind of. Yeah.
No, it's still a really good album. It was interesting. So I did a fair amount of research. She has a YouTube channel where she's explained like the lyrics to a couple of different songs. On her, she has like her music webpage. There's a little bit of info there too. Yeah, you can tell she's from burped again. You can tell she's from Indiana, like with her drawl, when she's just talking. Maybe not necessarily when she's singing. I don't know if you can tell.
I think with most cases, people's accents tend to disappear when
Yeah.
they're singing.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept. I don't really know why that is, but I think that music and singing is kind of a universal sort of thing. Like, there's kind of generally one right way to sing and to use your vocal cords, so I don't know if that's why people's accents are not nearly as prominent when they're singing.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, it also depends on, like, if you're singing a different language, it'll probably come out a little bit more. But anyway, we're not gonna get too bogged down in that. I want these to be also a little bit shorter. Probably, I don't know if this first one will get there, but I'd like these episodes to only be right around that 45-minute range. I think that might be a little more accessible. So, why this album? The ways and means. I've said it like 4 or 5 times already. I want to talk about her first one more, but I also really love this one, and so I think it's a great one to start with. And it's also it's short and it feels very like heartfelt and personal. That's kind of my like pretty simple take on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a lot. It's just good.
It's good, and I would say that the reason why it is so good is because her first album is obviously centered around a single subject, like the Chronicles of Narnia, which has a lot in it, but it's definitely more themed. Whereas this one is still themed, but in a different way. Like, it's taking personal experiences, but also not like, I would say in a lot of cases when you're listening to Christian music, they're usually taking a lot of very similar lines and a lot of things that are maybe like direct quotations from like a psalm. This isn't quite that. This is more taking concepts from the Bible about who God is and the way that he acts, and kind of using parables or allegory to help give an illustrated picture of how God interacts with people. Trying not to like quote directly from I too also listened to some of her descriptions about some of the songs in this album, but I think that's kind of her heart in this.
Well, I actually do have direct quotes from
her,
like, but not from like actual songs. Because we're still waiting for those. So from the description on her website, that's where this quote is from. It says, each song is written from the perspective of God in a different role, such as a surgeon, gardener, or artist, and how he relates to us in that role. The album title refers to the ways and means that God works on our hearts, specifically why God would give us a desire for a good thing, examples, children, marriage, healing, but not give us that good thing. And so, just from more stuff I heard from her, just talking and stuff, it's a very personal album to her, so much so where some of the songs, I think, a little bit of the meaning gets lost because like she only knows because she knows the history behind it, for a couple songs especially is what she said, and other things would be like, so as far as God working on our hearts, that's like talking about sanctification and kind of trusting God and how trying to figure out how he can be like both good and all powerful and yet like withhold good things from us. Another thing she said in a video was that a lot of songs are inspired by a book called The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment. I forgot to look that up extensively. I think it's a book written in the 1600s by some Let me look it up real quick. I think it's Jeremiah Burroughs, something like that. Yeah. And he was a preacher, so I'm not sure when was it written. Who knows? Sometime in the 1600s. I doubt it was in 1599 because that was his date of birth. So we're gonna go with 1600s.
Probably, yes.
I don't think he was popping out of the womb and being like, "Mom, I've got it, Christian contentment." That'd be interesting, though. Anyway, let's dive right into the songs now, though. The first one is "The Gardener." We both love this song. I mean, we love all these songs, but
yes,
especially love this song. And she does talk about it on her channel. It's one of two songs that on this album that she has a video about.
Mm-hmm.
But what from the song do you like, Christina?
In terms of just the way that the lyrics come together, there's this idea of hoping for a dream of something that is good, kind of like how we already talked about. This is obviously a running theme throughout the different songs, but there's a common thread of, why would you let me see this good thing? Why would you let me taste it and then take it away from me? Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to look at the notes I have, which are very limited.
The exact line is, "Why let me taste it to take it away?"
Yeah. So I think this could be relatable in a lot of ways, but it could be you had this idea of what your future was going to be like and it didn't happen, or you met this person and you thought it was going to work out but it didn't. Mm-hmm. And things that are important, and I think recognizing that those things are not, that God still cares, he's still there, and they're not trivial, like this is something to work through. But the ultimate, I think, hope in this song is a line about, I know you better when I am in need. This fact that things in this world are not always going to work out the way we expect or the way we want. They're not always going to be good. But in those moments when we realize that the world is letting us down, God isn't letting us down. We're growing closer to him during these really hard times. I think that would be, in terms of lyrics, why I like the song. Other than the lyrics, I would say that the general beat of this song is really good too, that it really draws you into that opening is kind of softer and it gets faster and louder, and it really draws you into the, like, this is what it's about.
Yeah. No, I need a sonically, is that the I don't know what the sound of it, right? Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. It has a really good rhythm, and then that rhythm over time, like, there's a specific part, and this happens to me with multiple songs, but like there's like a part where it switches like style of how she's strumming the guitar, and then that's right when you, like, you know, when you're listen to it on the radio, when you like crank it up a notch, because like it just needs to get that extra oomph of like loud and like, I could, this is such a good song. I'm a little bit weird and I listen to songs sometimes like that, but like there's just so much passion in that one, in that like build up to the bam, here we go. As far as her own words on this song, she said this was like the first song that she wrote, and it kind of inspired the rest of the album. Not like she ever wrote, but like for this album. And the theme of this song is reflected in pretty much every song, and we already talked about this a little bit, but it's like in every song, this theme is the same. It's just a different way of like presenting it, a different angle to look at sort of the same theme, I guess, which in this case is trying to deal with God giving us longings for things, but not giving us the thing itself, which you already alluded to with like, hey, I met someone and it didn't work out or something like that. Yeah. It was a little confusing for me, like, to understand exactly what she, like, why it was for her personally. Because she said that's something she struggled with. And, like, the example she gave was, like, giving someone the desire for children, but then, like, struggling with infertility. And I couldn't tell if she was talking about herself for that or if that was just the examples that she gave. It felt like it was something that she had also struggled with, like her and her husband, but I don't want to say that for sure. I'm also using my hands a lot, which is really funny because you guys can't see that, but that's just how I talk. But she said, like, she knows, like, other families who've struggled with similar things. And, you know, another thing she mentioned is, like, when you pray for someone in the hospital, like, who's sick, and you pray for them to get well, but they don't. And in the end, she was kind of like, I don't have necessarily an answer for this, like, and so she just goes back to that humbleness and contentment in God. And the line from the song is, I know you better when I'm in need. Yeah. And resting in him even when life is confusing and hard. I like the I don't know the technical terms. I probably need to learn this. It's the bridge, which
that's the really oomph part.
Yeah, the oomph part.
Yeah, obviously that's the technical term for it, and I know so much about music.
Yeah, we're practically music theorists here at this podcast that has no name.
Yeah, that's what it's called, the podcast with no name.
It's like the horse with no name.
Yes, that's a song, right?
Yeah, it's by America.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that one next.
No. But yeah, you prune. It's like prune the branches, and it makes you.
Yeah,
stronger.
I'll read it.
Yeah.
This is my favorite part of the song. It says, "God the gardener, when the autumn comes, I will not seasons fear. With the pruning of branches stronger, I will learn to love the shears." And I depending on which mood I'm in, I'm either like, this pumps me up or it makes me want to cry. And I love that line so much. Because it's a really simple analogy. You know, you in gardening and stuff, right? You cut off dead branches or weak things, right? To like make the whole thing itself like grow and be healthier. And I love that lyric because it makes me think about how all the pain in my life, like, why would I ever love, like, the shears? That sounds painful. That sounds hard. But to recognize that God is in control and that his plan is perfect and he will use that pain to help shape me and grow me. Where me as the plant in that scenario, I don't necessarily know that, right? I'm just, spreading my branches. I don't know what the analogy is. But then when God comes in and shapes me, it's confusing and hard, but I can trust him in that he knows what's best for me. So it's just a really good song. And honestly, like I said, every song after that kind of fits the same theme. But they go about it a little bit different. So it'll be interesting to, I don't know, look at the differences maybe.
Compare and contrast.
Yes. That's an English sounding thing.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I don't know if normally we'll go through every song, but since there's only 7, we'll at least touch every song.
Yeah.
The next one is The Surgeon, which is the image of obviously a surgeon, no duh, but someone, same deal, where if you think about what a surgeon does, like they're literally cutting into your body.
Yeah.
Like that's painful. That's not a good thing. But it's doing it for a purpose in order to save you, like if you had some injury or like a heart problem or something like that. And the chorus of that one is, I think, what I wanted to read. Actually, I don't know if it has a chorus. I don't know what it is. It is a line from the part of the song is, every day I'm learning how to die in every way, and I'm crushed on every side. It's God the surgeon, and he's come to save my life. I'm finding mercy cuts like a sharpened knife.
Yeah.
Which would be like, I don't know, like a scalpel or whatever.
Yeah, this one is a lot, especially in the beginning, it's a much more melancholy sort of sounding song, I would have to say. And that is, it contrasts with the opening song. So there's that kind of like, oh wait, we're like talking about something new, even though it's still a similar subject. But that idea of, I think, trusting too, because like when you have surgery, you have to go under and you have to completely trust your life to whoever is doing surgery on you, and you have no control over what is happening, and you just have to trust that they're doing the right thing for you, which that's a big deal. But yeah, it's painful, but oftentimes those surgeries in life, those things that cut you open and take time to heal, are ultimately something that lead to your life functioning the way that it's meant to. Kind of like how your body, you get something removed and that doesn't seem right, but ultimately when your body heals over, it's functioning the way it's supposed to now.
Yeah. The part you mentioned about it's kind of more melancholy is that first line is like, you bring me low, and it's her voice is a little bit lower, and she kind of draws it out longer. Like it's a very heavy line. And part of the reason I really like this one is that it has two different biblical references in the same stanza. I think that's the word. Is that right? Maybe that's poetry. Sure. I don't know.
We make up our own music terminology.
In the same general zone. I don't know.
This is not music for idiots. This is music by idiots. That's the name of this podcast. Music by idiots.
Oh, man. I don't know about that one. Anyway, the point I wanted to make, though, is there's two direct, well, not like full, like from the verse, but two direct quotes from scripture in this song. And the line is, I've been aching, so personal as pain. If I'm not mistaken, you like to give and take. I'm afflicted, but still you give me joy. The bones you're breaking, the bones they will rejoice. The you like to give and take is from Job. So that's chapter 1 of Job, verse 21. He says, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Honestly, this whole album feels very similar to the book of Job.
Much more condensed.
Yeah, this is
this
Job.
Gets you right to the heart of Job's.
This is like
life.
Yeah. It's kind of like Job, but probably a little nicer to listen to. I don't know. I think I'd rather listen to this than listen to someone read Job. But
it's Job without all the friends sitting around criticizing you.
There you go. That's better. I like that description better. But yeah, obviously the story of Job, not obviously, because I don't know who all's listening and what you do or do not know. But the story of Job is where he's like the most righteous man on earth. And then Satan comes to God and says, "Hey, I'm gonna take, like, can I take all this stuff away from him and see if he will still serve you?" Um, More or less. I'm kind of paraphrasing the story a little bit. It's like 40 chapters. Go read it yourself. But so Job, he loses like his family, his flocks, his home, everything just gets wiped out. And yet, right there, he says that, let me go back to it. The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. And that's reflected in this song, that this pain is personal, and it hurts, but still you give me joy. And the next part is the bones that you're breaking, the bones will rejoice, which I, again, don't know for sure because they're not exactly quoted, but I think that's from Psalm 51, verse 8, which says, "Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice." Psalm 51 is a very famous psalm because it's written by David after his affair with Bathsheba, and it's also after Nathan who's like a prophet. It's after Nathan has come and talked to him and confronted him about this major mistake that David made, and basically says all this terrible stuff is going to happen to you now, and how David's sons kind of go a little crazy, and there's all this rebellion within his own house, and how the son that he's going to have with Bathsheba is going to die, after birth, and obviously both of those people, Job and David, experienced incredibly painful things, and yet both of them rejoiced in their pain. And I think Sarah does a good job of reiterating those themes from the Bible, and those stories in her own unique way of telling it, kind of.
Yeah.
The next song is The Giver. No, wait, no, it's not. Yes, it is. All right, yes, it is. It's The Giver. Well, what's up with The Giver?
The Giver.
Not the book. I do love the book.
Yes,
but that's different topic.
Great book, and as far as I know, not associated in any.
I don't think so. Ooh, but now I'm thinking.
I don't think so.
I don't think it is. Anyway.
The Giver is one of those songs that is just so bittersweet, and even though you don't necessarily know exactly what it's about or what is going on in the song, you definitely catch on to the bittersweet hope and pain and joy and suffering that occurs during this song. I don't know exactly what it's about. I would assume that these are personal events that happened to Sarah herself or about people that she knows. I think a big portion of the song is about a funeral and about losing people who are sick, and there's also this other portion of the song that's about adoption and a new baby and kind of the end and the beginning of life all mixed up into one. But the ultimate reaction of the people who are in the midst of all this pain and suffering is this focus on the people that love God are praising him, and the people who are loved by God are praising him even in their pain, and they're still recognizing the joy in their life. It's not like they're so, I don't know, they're not blinded by the fact that there is pain. They're acknowledging the fact that there is pain, but they're acknowledging the fact that there's still joy too, I guess.
Yeah. It is hard to know. I wish this is one that she would explain herself, because for me, you're right. You get the vibe, right, of it's a very bittersweet song, but it's hard to know who died in the song,
Mhm.
who got it. I think you're right, that does seem like there's like an adoption, but then did like someone die in childbirth? Was it the baby that died? Was it some other person who died?
Yeah.
It's a little confusing to know. Um, but the chorus is part of it anyways. There's no love so unusual as I see you in the smile of a babe at the funeral. And that's a really good picture of that part of life where there's, the babe is like the start of life. That's where there's so much hope and joy and beauty. And then there's the funeral, which is the end of your life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of contrasting those two different ideas to create an image of, whether it's all this awesome vitality or it's the pain of losing someone. Like, the people are still praising God in both those moments.
Who's the giver and the person who takes away in this case. I think this is maybe more on the side note, but when it does talk about adoption, it also addresses the fact that there's this mom who gave up the baby in order that this baby has this life that he has. So I think that's kind of a theme in the song too, where adoption is this great, beautiful thing where people who have probably been waiting for a baby for a really long time finally had that baby, and there's this baby that's going to a good home, but there's also this loss of someone who had this child but couldn't keep them. So there's this giving and this taking away, and that combination of pain and beauty again is what is driving these people in this song, and kind of what's driving this whole album, the mix of pain and beauty and how God is in control of all of that.
The last line, that's, I don't know if it's the last line or if it's just the last line before the chorus or whatever. Near the end of the song, it says, even now you take from me my desires, and I should, but I look at your doing and freely say it is good. Not just good when I see the good things it has wrought. Even now I'm afflicted, and I take pleasure that I am in the hand of God. And yeah, it's still just reiterating the same thing over and over again, trusting like your whole life to God, no matter whether it's pain or if it's like the good times too. So
yeah, it's very Psalm-like, very David, where he goes through this whole thing of, my enemies are chasing me, people are trying to kill me, I'm sick, they're after me, God please help me. And every psalm you always end up at the end and he's like, but I'm still going to trust you, God, but I'm still going to praise you because you are good.
The next songs I think have a little bit more unique things that you can pull from it. The next one would be The Artist, which
I love this one.
You had notes on. It's a short song. It's
yes.
Only, I think, like 2.5 minutes or something like that.
It's a short song because it tells, I think, a story from the beginning to the end without necessarily like a repeated bridge, I think.
Yeah, no, it's just straight through. There's no chorus to it.
Because it starts out with this person who I guess is kind of supposed to represent like humanity, or someone who's like trying to trust in God. And
well, actually, I'll keep going with it, but it's the exact description starts with like a medium that speaks to man. So you're an artist, right?
Yeah.
And so the medium is the thing that it's like your canvas or whatever basically it's the art itself and not the artist. Anyway, keep going though.
Yes. Okay. So there is this thing, whatever you want to call it, the medium,
which is, like you said, supposed to be
it's supposed to be like the people
humanity,
they're speaking, and they're being like, okay, I see all of these beautiful colors of paint,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that you are very skilled. Please make something beautiful out of me. And when the painter goes to paint, it's all of these dark colors. It's all of this sadness and things, and it doesn't make sense to the medium. And they're very confused, but in the end of the song and of the story, the artist steps back and they realize that it's not just this dark, terrible picture, it's being painted in the shadow of the cross.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not. I have the line that I really like here, but it's like, don't confuse glory's reflection with glory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a beautiful object, but what makes you beautiful is what God has done for you. And this amazing, I guess, story of what Christ has done to sanctify you.
Yeah. This is the other song that she talked about. And the theme of this song comes like from Romans 9, which is the passage where Paul talks about like the clay and the potter.
Yeah.
And how the clay is the medium and it has no right to like ask the potter what he's doing, like when he's making him into.
Yeah, I'm sure glad none of the clay I worked with asked me what I was doing. I'm a failed artist.
It just
my pottery class did not go well.
It's like, what are you doing? I'm not.
Yes.
And Christina looked back and was like, I don't know either.
Exactly. Different scenario.
A little bit different, yes. But some of this is from when she's talking about it in her video on YouTube. Basically, she like wants to get at the idea of like God has authority over our lives and he directs us how he wants us to. He wants our lives to go, kind of. And she told another story about what inspired the song, or not the whole song, but just part of it, was like one time she was out driving, and it was like the traffic was kind of like, I think she said it was like stop and go. So like you have to, go forward a bit. It's piled up a little bit, kind of. So you need to be like paying attention to what you're doing. Anyway, basically, as she was driving, there was a guy behind her who was like getting really close to her bumper, and she was making her nervous. And so she kept looking in her rearview mirror at this guy behind him that was like just getting too close, and not realizing that she like almost hit the car in front of her because she's so preoccupied with the thing behind her. And how that translated into the song then was that she thought it was like, how ironic is it that she's getting distracted by looking at a reflection of the things behind her rather than like looking ahead, and how easily we get distracted by looking at like the reflections of God, which are everywhere, right? It's us as humanity, we are like literally made in the image of God, but we see his handiwork like in the skies and in the land and everywhere in all of his creation. And we get so preoccupied with those things that we lose sight of like God himself. And the line about being painted blue, which I'll read the exact lyrics. It says, this is like the medium talking, right? It says, I said, please reveal your glory, and as the paint drips from your hand, use the brightest of the pigments, the most beautiful of hues. And then the line after that is, but the first stroke was a dark shade of blue.
Yeah.
Which you find out in the song is because it's in the painting, it's like that's the shadow of the cross, right? Yeah. And it makes sense. It would be the color blue or like a dark color. But she said for her own life how she also kind of like feels blue. Like she has a tendency to like despair or sadness in her life, and how that's like something that she struggles with. But then it also helps her see like her need of God easier.
Yeah.
The exact line that she said was, "I would take a tendency to despair and sadness any day if it shows me my need of God." And I think that's just a really good reminder for a lot of us that like we are weak people.
Yeah.
And yet it's in our weakness that like we see God the clearest. So it is a really good song. I like that one. It's a little bit, it's not as interesting maybe like musically or whatever. I think
I would say
it's interesting, but it's not normal. That's what I meant.
It's definitely more like a very short story. I would think that conceptually and the way that it puts visual images into your mind is where it really stands out. And as someone who really likes art, I think it just connected with me, and the idea of the song stuck with me more than I would maybe stuck with me the most out of this album.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I might. We'll talk about the end, which one I think sticks out the most to us. But, yeah, I really do. I love this song. And I think part of it, why she was able to describe it, is like she's also like an artist herself. Like she's a music artist, but also like
she's like a real artist.
Like a paint person. I don't know exactly.
Exactly.
She's an artist. Really good. That's really good terminology here on the podcast with no name. That's just called Audio Stew Special. Perfect. The Healer is the next song. No, it's not. I did it wrong again. She has a PDF with like all of her lyrics that I'm looking at, but she put them in like a different order than they're on the album. I don't know why.
It's like a Chronicles of Narnia type conspiracy.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just wrong on YouTube. I don't know. That would be weird. The next one, we'll say is The Traveler. I don't know. Yeah. That's one we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And you had notes on that one also.
This one is definitely more of a Job type scenario, but with the gospel really heavily in it. It's about this person who feels like they're traveling alone on a really tough and lonely road, and they can't understand why they're bearing all of this pain by themselves, and why isn't anyone caring for them, and like they have it worse than anyone else in the world, which I think is we all kind of have that tendency to feel like
we're relatable.
our problems are unique, and we obviously have it worse than anyone else, and there's just no hope. But then there's kind of this refrain or reversal of, it's like Jesus speaking to this person or to us, where it's like, did you walk this road alone to Calvary? Were you bearing the weight of all the sins of the world? Were you lonelier than me? And it's not necessarily like in a mocking way, but it is very similar to in Job, where God finally comes to Job and he's like, yes, you're a very righteous person, but do you do this? Do you do this? Are you like in control of the entire world? Do you understand how great I am? But there's also this part of, you're not alone, and I completely understand what you're going through, because I've been there too, and I've had it heavier and I've had it worse. So God is walking with you. You're not a lonely traveler in life, I think is kind of the main message of the song. But I always love a small bit of sarcasm. So. Yeah,
it's kind of the the feel of the tone is not the feel of the tone. Is that what I said?
Sure.
That doesn't make any sense. I started talking before my brain got into gear. That happens too much. The tone of like the song is not a mocking one. I don't think it's more of a, I don't know how to describe it, like reproof, I guess, like
rhetoric.
Yeah, like it's more of like, hey, come on, dude, open your eyes, and not a like, are you serious? Like, you know, so yeah, it starts out like, oh, the lonely road I'm on, nobody knows all my sorrows. Not, it doesn't sound like that. Listen to the song; she sings it better. But then it comes back with, this is the refrain you talked about, is, oh, the lonely road you're on, was it to Calvary, bearing the weight of all the world for the ones who made you bleed. You think you're misunderstood. Who lonelier than me? Who died for those that struck him? Who bled to make them free? This also has a pretty strong, like, what do we call it? The oomph part.
Yes, exactly. The oomph part.
That's part.
That's the name of this
oomph
podcast.
Part.
The oomph part. The oomph.
Is I am the God man. This road was mine. Your pain was in my life sanctified. Lived what you are living so that you might be alive. I love that part. The lived what you are living so you might be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
The God-man aspect of this, I think, is really important, because I think sometimes we tend to focus on God, as some being way out there in this ivory castle that just couldn't possibly understand, because they're all powerful. They've never had to deal with pain. But the fact that Jesus came down to earth and he put on his God-man suit and lived life as we have all lived, but suffered in a way that we couldn't possibly understand because of the fact that he was God, and he's bearing all the weight of the sins of the world and doing it so alone and feeling alone in a way that we never have to feel because of what he did. It's not necessarily a slap in the face, but it could be if you needed it to be. Or it's just a good wake-up call to the reality that you're never alone. You're really not.
Yeah, I think her voice is too, I don't know. Her voice sounds too kind for it to be just like a knock you out punch, but it's definitely a, like, I don't know, like, hey, listen up, like, type of song, you know. Yeah, it's good. They're all good. I already said that, but I'll keep saying it. And the next song is The Healer, which kind of, I think, goes back to that same talking more specifically about Jesus. And The Healer, I think, is kind of just the one song on it that's probably the most different thematically, because they're all, like I said, centered around that theme of trusting God in the pain. This one is more of a like that first step thing of like, this is like the gospel. This is the good news that God has the power to actually do that, to give life to things that are dead and hopeless.
This one's more jazzy, big band, choir, really like, if you're in that mood, you're in that mood, kind of.
It's got a unique, like, piano jazz type rhythm, I would say. Like I said, we're not music people, like technical music people, but it's got good jazzy vibes.
We're not music people. The name of the podcast.
Christina by the end will have like 4 different, no more than that,
Every,
probably like 10 different
podcast
names.
is just me naming the podcast.
Yep. You gotta kind of have it. It's hard to read the lyrics because you have to have the right like rhythm for it. But it's like the very first line is "Good news for the sick." Or hang on, let me try this again. Good news for the sin sick and weary soul. The healer comes now to make you whole. No greater power was ever known, and he commands, rise and walk. And then same kind of rhythm. He says, he spoke and the blind man now he sees, makes dead men alive men, and I believe. These bones were dry and now they breathe, for he commands, rise and walk.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of it just kind of goes the whole song. It's really good.
It has like Jesus's miracles of healing people and making them whole again, but also has that Old Testament about the dry bones that come alive and they live again.
Oh yeah, this Ezekiel. I didn't get that reference pulled up, but that is from the book of Ezekiel. Mm-hmm. And the rise and walk would be from the story of Lazarus, I guess, which is in the Gospels. Is it? I don't know. Is it in every Gospel book? I don't think it is. Pretty sure it's in Luke, but you know what? Forget. I'll just look up. Which Gospels are? Christina, vamp for me.
Hashtag modern technology.
Which Gospels are?
I think the best part about this song is the fact that it focuses in on the fact that God, in his justness and in his greatness, still does do great things that are good, and sometimes people do see again, and sometimes they do walk, and we can praise him for that. But there's also the fact that it's what's happening on the inside, and that the soul is what needs to be healed in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is probably the most. I think that is probably why it's jazzier.
Mm-hmm. It's more upbeat. It's
because
more focusing on the.
It doesn't really have a melancholy
part. Life,
yeah. Or it's all like, hey, this is good news. That's why. I'm like figuring this stuff out as I go.
Yeah, this helps make the album maybe a little bit more balanced, and I think also provides a little bit of variety for people who might not be more in the indie folk kind of modern music. This is definitely more in that jazzy feel good music.
It's still not what I would call mainstream music, but it's a different vibe.
It's a little bit more 20s, swinging, 30s. Sure,
something like that. Lazarus, the story of Lazarus is in the book of John. I don't know. And as far as I can tell, it wasn't in the other ones, but I didn't know off the top of my head. Which leaves us with one more song, and we are at, let me see, 58 minutes, so it's a little bit long, but we got a little sidetracked. So I think this could work. I
think with editing, you're going to be about right there.
Yeah, well, I don't want to edit it.
Never mind. This is an unedited podcast for all the people who like that sort of thing.
I might try that, You're just save myself some
an extra sibling that we found.
Yeah. Hello,
not
extra
too
sibling. Difficult
to find in this household.
Yes.
Probably just forgot you existed.
Oops. We have a fairly decently large family. The last song is The Composer, which I really love because it's not at all the same song or even quite the same message, but there's a album which I would love to talk about this one, but I don't know if you've listened to it before, but by Beautiful Eulogy, that's called Instruments of Mercy, and I think that's what it's called. It's their second album, and there's one song on there that kind of talks about like playing an instrument in God's orchestra or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly what this song is about, but it kind of reminded me of that song, and so I really like it. But Let me look at my notes. It kind of starts off like it goes a little bit more back to the melancholy, um, but overall, I think it's a more upbeat song, which is again sort of a reflection of the whole album, right? Where it's these things are hard and sad, but ultimately there's hope. It starts off with, "It was a song that I offered, but he scrapped that song for the parts, because I'm the composer's daughter and he plays the strings of the heart." I'll read the next part too. "He takes the things I desire. He took the chords I had claimed. My dross consumed by the fire, my song composed by the pain."
It's kind of a bigger picture onion peeling back sort of a thing where it's like, this is music and it's talking about music and it's talking about how like the way that music works and how God is this kind of great composer who, like in any song, there's the more sad parts and then there's the more upbeat parts, and they all kind of come together to create a beautiful music.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's
part of it.
That's the one part that I got out of it. Okay. There's more, but
I think this is also one of the ones that's not necessarily harder to interpret. I think you just have to think about it more. Where at the start, like this person has a song that they offered, right? This is what I'm giving to you, God, and it's kind of like this is my plan for my life, right? This is my song, and then it says that he scrapped the song for the parts, and like that sounds in my head like I'm like, well, that's no fun. Like I worked hard on this. Like I had this whole thing that I worked hard for and I put together for you, and then you took it and like took all the chords out of it and made something new that you wanted for me instead. And again, that is just reflecting the whole album of there are things in our life that we don't understand, and yet God has his plan, and his plan will surpass our plan. We'll just go out with the chorus of this is take my will and make it yours, and then the chorus is, I'm finding joy in the way that my sorrow moves me. I feel it more in the way my heart aches. I'm comforted in that I know you know me. And I think this is the composer's way. I like how even within that there's some hesitation of I think this is the composer's way.
Yeah.
Where she's admitting that she doesn't totally understand. It's like the sorrow in her life and her heartache. But she's still comforted in the fact that God knows her. And to be known by God is enough for her to have comfort, no matter what in life. So really a great album. It's weird to dissect because it's kind of thematically like the lyrics are all different, but they're all related to the same message. Yeah. So it kind of I'm sure listening to this, it kind of sounds like we've been repeating the same like thing over and over again.
But I think that's kind of what the album is doing itself, because one, there's always this big question of if God is good, why do bad things happen? Which isn't just a struggle for people who are not Christians, it's a struggle for people who are Christians trying to live life like that too. Because I think somewhere in our minds there's always this expectation that good things are going to happen, and also this maybe lack of ability or lack of tools for when bad things happen. How do you talk about it? How do you deal with it? Because you can't just be happy all the time. You can't just pretend that bad things don't happen and not address them. You have to deal with it, and I think that's what a lot of this album is. It's dealing with that, and it's telling stories that people can relate to, and it's pointing you to the way that you deal with that is you go to God and you keep coming back. This was definitely, I think this album, and then obviously many of other Sarah Sparks albums, are kind of like what got me through college, because it was exactly what I needed to hear. Because in that point in someone's life, when you reach like your early 20s, there's so many things that you had expectations for that you, especially in my case, maybe didn't get, or it didn't happen the way I want, or things were constantly changing and it didn't make sense. So I just needed someone who was going to be real like that and admit the fact that this life is not perfect, but it's not supposed to be that way. And there is still a good plan, and it's all coming together, even if you can't see it, and even if it hurts.
Mm-hmm. I'm on the right track then, I guess, if I'm already listening to this stuff at the freshman year. I go back to probably the Gardner one with I just, like, yeah, I mean, I sing a lot of stuff in the shower, but I sing this line, the part of, with the pruning of branches stronger, I will learn to love the shears. And the part about that is that the part of that about that connects with me the most is I will learn to love the shears. Where like I'm getting to the point in my life where like the hard parts of life are starting to become more evident.
Yeah.
And you know, when, not saying like hard stuff doesn't happen to you when you're younger, but really, for most people, when you reach those first stages of independence is when a lot of stuff in life like kind of becomes real, and you're like, oh my word, I don't know what was like. And that's also probably the parts of life where you're starting to, like, I don't know, do like not necessarily riskier things, like in the sense of like, oh, this is dangerous, but like risky in the sense of like you're taking like bigger steps in defining your life, whether it's like through like career or like the person that you're going to marry or something like that. And how all those different plans that you have, and you're really not necessarily sure about, and then suddenly something comes in, the shears come in, and it's like, oh, it's like that really hurt. And a lot of times I don't love the shears. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's painful. But the part where it's learning to love the shears and how it's a process. That's what sanctification is growing in righteousness. And just as life goes on, realizing how, like, who God is and how he works. And the more, hopefully, you know, if you're doing life right, hopefully the older you get, the more you learn. And I think the sooner you can learn to love the shears, probably the better off you'll be in life. But yeah, it's a really great album. I'll pick the Gardener. The Gardener's my favorite song.
Okay.
What's yours?
I think it is the artist, because even if it's not maybe directly stated in the song, I think there's this idea of when people are maybe making a painting or doing a sketch, often it can look very confusing and kind of disordered before
Especially
everything
if it's me.
before everything comes together. And kind of like in the song where it's like, why is there this random dark
Yeah.
blue here? That's not like the bright happy colors I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my life in the past few years has felt very chaotic and not necessarily feeling like it's all coming together. Like I can't see this painting because I'm too close. I'm right there in it, and this color and that color don't seem like they go together. I don't know what this painting is ultimately creating, but I think just that the end of the song where it's not about necessarily looking for satisfaction completely in the things of this life that people often look for satisfaction for. Like, it's not the relationship that's going to be your ultimate satisfaction. It's not this perfect career. It's not this perfect house. Everything that people look for satisfaction for is not the ultimate thing. The ultimate thing is God. These are just reflections. And so when things in life feel really confusing and disordered and it's not what you expect, you know that the person that is making all of this is the person who is the one that deserves the glory. So that's the one you praise, and that's the one that you go to. And this disordered chaos is creating something even when you can't see what it is. And you might not even see what it is until after you're dead, because sometimes that's just the way that life works. You might not know exactly what was this spot right here, like why did that happen, because that didn't make sense to me at the time. But there's just that trusting that this is still a work of art and it's still something beautiful too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of the the vibe I got from this song and kind of the thought processes that it takes me through, I guess.
I think it makes a really good connection because we are God's art.
Mm-hmm.
He is the artist. Like we are his workmanship. And how in real life, right? It's that we are we bear the image of God. That's we are the reflection of glory in that sense. But in this song, how it's described, is we are still the art. Like we are like a beautiful thing. But our meaning is in the shadow of the cross, right? Yeah. So we have a point, we have a purpose because God has given us that as his art, but our meaning and purpose is only found in him. Yeah. And I think that's a really awesome way of describing it. And that's really in general why I love her work so much, is because something I think I don't always have a great way of describing things like technically. Yeah. And like, oh, well, this is how life works. You know, like let's not. I don't always think of things as like a machine, and like, you know, like we're all cogs in the system or whatever that God has planned. Which I mean, you could maybe run with that analogy, but yeah, I think I just love being able to describe things like in an artistic analogy. And let's go with the do you have any other final thoughts?
I mean, if you want an album that's countercultural to anything that you're going to be going through in life right now, because talk about a time when the world isn't going the way that you want it to and it feels pretty dark and empty. This is the sort of album that's going to address that and not run from that or hide from that, but also point you in a direction of hope and keep you going.
I think a lot of us are feeling a lot of the pain side in 2020. Some more than others, but yeah, I'd agree. This is a timeless album because not because it's like, oh, this is the greatest thing since Stevie Wonder or something like that. I don't know. I need a better,
because humans are humans, and these are human problems.
Yeah,
everybody has to address at some point in time.
Yeah, it's not necessarily because this is like from the most famous person in the world. It's just because it speaks to everyone. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. A little bit different. I don't know for sure. I might just not edit it because I don't want to. Maybe I will still, but I think it'll just be a little bit of a different change of pace. So we'll see how much I want to change that pace. Oh, based off of what we've already done. Thank you, Christina. Maybe co-host person for this episode at least.
Thank you for having me on.
Yes. But I'm gonna end off with a line from the artist. It says, "So I begged and then I pleaded. I do not understand the means. Why would you put the hope inside me if you would not paint the dream? He said, don't let glory's reflection distract you from glory. Remember that all good things come from me." Have a great day, guys.